You're listening to the All Day Ruckoff podcast, episode number 104. Welcome to the All Day Ruckoff podcast, episode number 104. This is your host, Brian, and I wanted to thank you so much for tuning in. The All Day Ruckoff podcast focuses on the GRT and rucking community and includes interviews, motivation, and advice to keep you informed and get you ready for your next event. In this episode, we've got my buddy David Davenport on to talk about GORUCK Constellation 12. It's pretty cool. He actually lives close to where I do, which is nice. I first met him at the GORUCK Star Course 50 down in Seattle. That was the first event he did. He talks about that a little bit in this interview. And then we got to hang out again at GORUCK Constellation 12. He took amazing notes during the event. So I feel really lucky to have him on because he definitely filled in a lot of notes that I missed during it. And we cover a lot of good topics about the event. The big question I always get is, if you can do one Constellation event, do you recommend the 6 or the 12? We get into that. He didn't do the 6, and so we talk about his thoughts behind if he felt like he missed anything, or if there was any content that he wished he had gotten. In addition, GORUCK Constellation is changing. It's getting overhauled for 2020. So this is kind of a fun episode because we talk about what happened in our event in 2019. The events probably aren't going to be like this again, so it's nice to get this stuff down for historical purposes. Quickly, before we get into the interview, I want to give a shout out to my buddy Ryan for being a patron on Patreon. Truly appreciate it, man. I just want you to know that I appreciate the support. One last quick update. 1000D Cordura notebook covers back in stock, new colors. So there's a black and an olive drab now. So if you've been waiting for those, I know there are a number of people who were. They're available in the All Day Ruckoff store, alldayruckoff.com/store. Thank you for listening, and here is the interview with David. Today, I'm talking with David Davenport. I'm really excited to have him on the call. He actually lives very close to me, which is exciting. We've met at previous GORUCK events in the Seattle area, and today we're going to be talking about GORUCK Constellation 12 in 2019. David, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks so much again for coming on. I'm excited to talk about some Constellation stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Constellation is one of those weird events where, that came out 2017 and then it was pretty different for 2018 and even more different for 2019. And then it sounds like GORUCK's going to be revamping it pretty hard in 2020. So I think it sees a lot more evolution than some of their other events, which I don't know. To me, that makes it interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice having the variety.
Yeah. Before we get into GORUCK Constellation, I'm curious how you got involved in GORUCK, in rucking, and in all of this.
Sure. Before I started to get into it, I hadn't even heard about GORUCK until maybe March, April of 2018. I had started doing the Art of Manliness. The guy who does that started this thing called Strenuous Life. And so it was sort of a program to get people who would see the cool articles on a site to start putting those things into practice, like, learning to shave with a straight edge and stuff like that. But one of the requirements in there was you had to have an hour of physical fitness a day. Before I got into that, which I think I started that one up maybe January 2018, I didn't do any exercise. I just relied on my metabolism to keep me skinny. But other than that, was internally in horrible shape. And through doing that, one of the challenges in there was talking about this 50-miler thing, this challenge from Teddy Roosevelt and JFK to cover 50 miles in 20 hours. And I thought, hey, that sounds really cool. And then somebody posted something saying, yeah, there's this GORUCK thing where you can go do it in August. I had no idea what it was, checked out the website, thought it looked interesting, and just went ahead and signed up. And from there, I was just bought a 511 pack on Amazon and made myself a plate out of some PVC pipe and a barbell all mangled together that worked. and just did training rucks with a buddy of mine, rucking from work in downtown Seattle up to the north end. And then came August and did that event and been hooked ever since.
That's a great way to get started. I mean, there's some people who think that, you need a rucker or you need a GORUCK bag to do these events, but 511, was it a Rush 12?
It was Rush 24.
Rush 24. Some PVC pipe and a weight, and you're good to go.
Yeah, I liked the gear, but I wasn't ready to commit yet until I knew that it's something I do long term, because I've tended to collect hobbies in the past that last for a few months and go away. So wanted to make sure on this one, and of course, after doing that, I then signed up for a tough and did that, and then finally decided, okay, I'm gonna get the gear. And yeah, once I threw the bag on, I was like, oh yeah, that fits just right.
Yeah, it's a bit different.
Ever since. Yeah.
The rucker or the other ones versus the 511. So that first event you did, was that the Star Course in Seattle back in 2018?
Yep. Star Course 50. Look back on it with fond memories.
Yeah, that was a good event.
Wild. A lot of fun.
We really lucked out with that, didn't we? With the weather.
Yeah, we lucked out. It sounded like everybody else in all the other events, no matter how good the weather had been, they got rain, and we just got this incredible weather in Seattle, and I couldn't have asked for better. It was beautiful. Got to see parts of the city that I've lived here all my life, and I got to see parts of the city I'd never bothered to go and visit. So it's cool.
And not only did you get to see them, you got to ruck through them, so you got to really see them. It wasn't a quick drive by.
Yeah, very true. It was nice getting to some familiar spots, because I knew when we were getting near the Museum of Flight, there was a Starbucks there, so I could get more coffee for the morning to keep pushing through.
That's awesome. We stopped at that same Starbucks.
Yeah, the one that looks like a pile of shipping crates.
Yep. I think a lot of people stopped there. They must have been pretty curious.
Yeah, were these weirdos with backpacks.
So Constellation 12, Seattle got one of the very first events for 2019. So that was back in, was it early March that event happened?
Yeah, right at the start of it.
So what about the Constellation event drew you in? Was it just because it was another GORUCK event, or was there something about the way GORUCK described it that made you want to do it?
It was a few different things. It was another event, but I had heard people talk about doing Constellation, but I didn't really know at all what it was. Just that there was a lot of positive talk, and almost sort of secretive talk about it, about how you don't want to talk about it too much because you don't want to give it away. But then it sounded like each one of them was different. So there was a lot of mystique around it for me. And it actually made me not want to dig into it too much and be more surprised. I was surprised when I saw I wouldn't have to have a ruck plate. That seemed really weird, but then, yeah, I saw it was coming up. And when I saw there was about survival type stuff, I just went straight for the 12-hour, because I wanted as much as I could get. Again, I didn't know you could do those back to back either. So,
yeah, I was there for the 6 before too, and that was pretty fun. But the 12 was a blast.
Yeah, it really was.
And I'm sure finding out you don't need a ruck plate was probably a pleasant surprise in the grand scheme of GORUCK surprises.
Yeah, and seeing how much mileage we covered by the end of the night, I could see why, especially since they wanted us to be able to focus on learning. We covered a lot of ground. Yeah,
we did. We covered, we hit easily double-digit miles, at least my team did. So we covered some good ground, and it can be a little bit tougher to focus on some of those skill sets when you've got a ton of weight in your pack.
Yeah. Just trying to remember how much we got. But yeah, covered a bit.
Yeah, I think I tracked about 13 or 14 miles total.
Yeah, we got 16 and a half. There it is. Yeah. 16 and a half. So you were smarter with your route planning. That must have been it.
In that regard, it's an interesting event. So you signed up for it. You didn't do too much research in it because you wanted it to be a surprise. And that's probably a smart way of doing it. Grab the packing list and then, make sure you have everything. And beyond that, get excited for a GORUCK event.
Yep.
So have you done at this point, so this was in early March, had you done a light or a tough yet?
Yeah, I had done both a tough and a light. Yeah, I did did the Battle of the Bulge Light, which I think was back in February. So pretty close to yeah, it wasn't too long between the light and the Constellation.
So you've got to experience kind of both side of the cadre, because one of the things about
Yeah,
Constellation is that they're a little bit nicer, and kind of with the Star Course too, it's more informative, and they're just there for admin things and to get you right at the end of the event, versus the cadre at the light and the tough, where they've got their true event game face on.
exactly. Yeah, because we had Cadre Dustin and for the Constellation, and it was different. It was a little unnerving at first because I kept waiting for us to screw up and to have to do PT or something like that. But then I did just find out that he's doing my upcoming event, so I'll get to see the other side of him.
Yeah, that will be
And
interesting.
having seen him at the end of, because he was one of the cadre in the last selection, and I watched some of that just a little while ago, because I like I like working out and listening to selection, because I've got cadre yelling at me while I'm working out. And then he came on, and there was a lot of water involved, so I'm just mentally preparing myself for that.
Yeah, I think that's probably a smart choice.
Yeah.
So that threw me off at Constellation too. When I showed up for my first one, the cadre was really nice. It was more of a, when we started off, more of an informative, like everyone, get together in a group, kind of line up, but it wasn't you guys aren't in proper formation, like, get on your face, get on your back, all that stuff. So it definitely threw me for a loop. So I'm glad I'm not alone there.
Yeah.
So I've wrote down kind of the order things went, I think, at the event to the best of my ability and memory. And so when we got there, so this was at a CrossFit gym just off the freeway, which was nice, because I don't know if when you were looking at the events or not, if you had read this, but sometimes GORUCK can't really find a location to do them at that's like an inside location. And so people have ended up doing Constellation classes in outdoor structures. So I thought that was pretty nice that we had a spot to get warm and stay warm during the event.
Yeah, I didn't know that, because I remember getting back to the facility, and especially going through the night there. It was nice to get inside and be able to eat a little food in a heated area. I did not know that.
I don't think it's happened too often. It might have just been last year, but I think there was at least one class that part of their Constellation was done in a parking lot. I just remember thinking that it could go either way, because when it hits 2 a.m. and you're inside a warm building, you get kind of tired. But if you're outside, you're just spending all of your energy trying to stay warm.
Sure, I guess it makes it more authentic, though, right?
Yeah.
For your survival scenario.
Yeah, survival scenario, and you've got this nice warm CrossFit gym.
Exactly.
So what I have us starting off as doing is kind of like a skills refresher, which was, I mean, for the most part, it kind of went over what was done in the Constellation 6. It didn't go into the same amount of detail that Constellation 6 went into, but it seemed like it was a good amount of base knowledge, so that, I don't know, people who were there didn't feel like they missed anything out by not doing the 6. So I guess that's a good question for you.
Right.
Did you, when you were here at the 12, did you at any point in time think, man, I really wish I had done the 6 so I would have known this information? Or did you feel like you pretty much, learned everything you needed in just the 12?
But at the beginning, I did worry that I had missed something by not going to the 6, because everybody had some stuff carrying over from the 6, like their gas mask and a few other items. And so I did initially wonder, well, shoot, did I shoot myself in the foot by not going? Were you supposed to go to both? But as the evening went on, I found that, yeah, we got everything we needed in the 12. And so there wasn't any problem just coming straight into it like that.
That's what it seemed like, at least from my end, but I had done the 6 already, so I couldn't really say for sure. So I'm glad to hear that, because I know that there's a lot of people out there who think, do I have to do the 6 first, or can I just do the 12? If I'm choosing one or the other, which one should I choose? And I guess just my little thought on that one is choose the 12, because it's a lot more fun to do it overnight.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, that was the worry at first, but everything we needed to know, like I was concerned, that we'd be in a mad scramble to get the gas masks put together, or things like that that we'd be behind, or that we'd be a detriment to the other folks in our team by being behind. But no, it was, and I'd say the same thing. Do the 12. I mean, going through the night and having to deal with fatigue and things like that. It's a much better experience. Plus, you get 2 times the fun.
Yeah, 2 times the fun, and there's just something more real feeling about hiding in the bushes in the middle of the night while people are out there searching for you.
Yeah.
Than during the day. It's a little different.
Yeah, because were you having to make hides and do all of that stuff during the day?
We did. We made hides during the day and hid from a team searching, and so our hide was a little bit different because, I mean, you can use the darkness of the night when you're hiding at night, but we were making that hide during the day, and there were a couple of people on our team who were like, "Should we really be over here? Are you sure we should be moving these bushes? And what if someone sees us?" And at night, I feel like you don't have any of those thoughts. You're like, "We just got to get this done."
Yeah, I think you feel a lot better about jumping fences and
yeah,
going places you probably shouldn't when it's the middle of the night, dumpster diving and
yeah.
Well, and that was one of the things that amazed me about the location, because I rarely get to the east side, and I think Bellevue ended up being a really good spot for it because it's just empty at night. And so when we're running around, we weren't running into people who were out and about or anything like that. It was just, the city was dead, and it seemed to really help with the feel of the venue, because it was kind of eerie about how empty it was, I thought.
It was, and it makes me wonder if GORUCK intentionally does that, because the first year they're out here, they're on the east side as well in Bellevue. The second year they're here, they're on Mercer Island, which is very similar at night, just completely dead. And then third year they're back here in Bellevue again. So, I mean, if they had done it in Seattle and either pretty much anywhere, Capitol Hill, or even over in Ballard and Fremont, it would have just been people everywhere. So in both, in all locations, I think the location was pretty good. So I got us as doing the skill refresher, and then we did maps. We learned about maps, how to orient yourself and figure out where you're going. When you did that portion of it, we had done the maps before. Did you feel like you learned something from the map section, or was it pretty basic?
It was good. I mean, there was some stuff I ended up just taking crazy notes with it, but just some of the common sense type stuff, as far as putting your markings on plastic, keeping them separate from the map, and just different things like that. It was really informative stuff, and so yeah, I'd say it was good having a refresher, especially since, I mean, I know I personally have gotten way too used to relying on the GPS on my phone. So getting reacquainted with a map actually got me later on just more interested in using a paper map more often, because you've got this bigger view of the city, and you can plan further out than the tiny little window on your phone. So I really enjoyed the map section, found it valuable.
Yeah, and there are just those little tips in there that are really like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, don't take a marker to your map, because then if you need to do another route, like, you're screwed and you only have one map. Put it over plastic and use that instead. It's like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And now that you say that, but I know personally, if they said plot your map, I would have just gone Sharpie straight to the map and been like, here we are.
Yeah, exactly. And just to talk about too, if you're in a situation where you don't want folks to know your hide is or anything like that, having it on plastic and keeping those separate so that you aren't just giving away all of your information if the map is found, or tips like, how tourist maps show you the areas to avoid and things like that. It's when I think about it after hearing about it, I'm like, oh, that's common sense, but it certainly isn't stuff that occurred to me at the time.
Yeah. He said, grab a tourist map, and those are the spots you do not want to go. Oh yeah.
Exactly.
So in your notes, do you have anything between talking about maps and the skills refresher and when we went out on that first long movement?
Well, other than our team names, that was a fun one. I did write all of those down. Because we ended up splitting into our teams. So we had Team Sparkle Pony, Team ACTAC, they're from Alaska, Team Ron Burgundy, and also my team, which was For a Good Time Call. So at least we have some really good names.
Yeah. And so I guess if people are listening and they're not sure of how Constellation's set up, when you show up, you split yourselves into teams, and some people had themselves in teams before they showed up. Some people figured out their teams when they got there. I was in that boat. I just showed up and found a team. And so I was on Team Sparkle Pony. And then you attack the event with your team. And so when you're out there hunting other teams and doing all that kind of stuff, it's you versus them. So I guess if you're signed up for the event with a friend, then make sure you're on the same team if you want to do the event with them. And if you're trying to use this as a way to not spend time with them, then get on different teams, because that will work.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because when I showed up for that, I did know one of my buddies from our Rock Club Northwest stuff, Jean-Michel. He was attending it as well, so we were able to group up and be on the team, and that was cool. But we also had some new folks, and then at the beginning we had to put in our phone numbers and everything, so that because we'd be sending in pictures as we went for our different waypoints.
Yeah, so the waypoints, there were 4 of them that we had, if I recall correctly. And they were a decent distance away from the start location. So I've got mixed thoughts on that. So I'm curious, what were your thoughts on how far away our waypoints were? Were they too far away? Were they just the right distance?
I thought they were a good distance. It was funny looking back at the map that they gave us, because it was really just in the 4 corners of the map, and they really pushed them out there. But I thought it was doable. I just like walking around a lot. Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
It was interesting though, because they had, since we were given different orders that we had to hit the waypoints in the first round, I think that distance was good because it gave us enough opportunity to make us feel like we really had to watch where we were going, so another team wouldn't spot us, because we were trying to be as covert as possible as we're moving around. There was, because of that longer distance, we were concerned more and really having to watch where we were going and choose particular routes to try and avoid other teams. So I think the distance was good.
Yeah, it was a tough one for me. So those 4 points, we actually selected those in the Constellation 6. And so he had ideas of where the points could be.
Oh, okay.
And then it was our group that, the whole class that selected those 4 points. And I go back and forth on it because I feel like we were out there rucking a lot to get between the points, because we had to hit them all in, the worst order possible, which I think came out to 6.5 or 7 miles. But it was nice because there was enough distance between them that you could really plot a path that you didn't think anyone would spot you on. Like if, for example, if the points were, 3 blocks in each direction, there's only so many options. But since it was, a solid 10 blocks plus in each direction, you could really make the path go in a way that people wouldn't be able to track you. So I go back and forth on it because I was hoping that we were going to get to the hunting and all that stuff a little bit quicker, but I thought that we were able to practice a lot of the evasion stuff pretty well, trying to not get found by other teams going between points.
Well, especially since with those distances, we got a good mix of main streets and side streets. I thought that was pretty interesting because we did get to some of those spots where you're just totally exposed and have to figure out. So I remember in the first time we went out, I think we were going between our first and second or second and third waypoint, and we saw another team coming around the corner, and there was nowhere to hide, and so we're just running full out trying to find some place to get around them before they spotted us. Yeah,
that's a tough one, and it's exciting that it happened to your team, because I know, we would get to a point and it'd be pretty open and be like, man, do we really want to go 2 blocks north, 2 blocks west, 1 block south, 1 block west, 1 block south again, just to get around this? Or do we just want to go and cut through? And, this isn't a disaster scenario in real life, but you guys kind of got to experience if it had been a disastrous scenario and that was like a roving gang or, someone trying to rob you. Like that would have been going out in the open is a big decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that sort of leads to one of the things I realized with this is you get so much more out of it, when you try and just play into the scenario you're in. And so I think a bunch of us did really get into it. And so there was a spot where we just had to book it down the main street. And that's what we did. Just ran full out and tried to climb over a fence and keep on going. Yeah, I do think you get a lot more out of the whole thing when you just let yourself get into it and play along.
Yeah, it's so true. And I mean, Constellation is one of those events where you have the option of doing that, and there's no cadre yelling at you. So at a light and a tough, you don't really have an option of not getting into it because you either get into it or you get into the front leaning rest. Like you're getting into something.
Yeah.
But at Constellation, you really have to, I guess, how would you describe it? Like sell yourself on the idea that you're in a disaster scenario and make decisions based on that instead of making the decision you would in, your everyday life.
Yeah, exactly. You sort of have to choose how much you're going to get out of it, because you can just sort of play along and listen to them talk and things like that. But when closest I can think of is it's like, playing in the woods when you're a kid and you're pretending that the bad guys are over that hill, and you end up getting so much more out of it. And plus, when the team is doing that as well, it feels like you get a lot more value, and I feel like you notice more things, you're more creative. It just makes for a more fun event, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It definitely makes for a more fun event when your entire team is in it together with that mindset. And then on the flip side, I guess, if that's not a mindset that you're able to get into in the slightest, then there's a chance that GORUCK Constellation's not for you, because I think it really requires that to get the most out of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So that first movement, I mean, that was a long one. We had to hit all the points in like the most roundabout way.
Yeah.
And it sounds like your team did a really good job with that.
We were really fortunate because one of the guys on the team was a Bellevue native. And so he knew side streets. That guy knew Bellevue like the back of his hand. It was nuts. And so we'd have our map and we'd be going with the map and he'd go, "Oh, you just need to cut over here." And so we'd adjust our route. And so we were really fortunate in that respect, I think. And I guess the downside is we didn't get as much map time. At the beginning, we were worried about where are we going on the map, but we saw how well the guy knew the city. We trusted him to navigate for us, and it certainly helped us move very quickly and accurately through the city.
That's perfect. So going off your notes, after that first movement, we all came back to the CrossFit box where we were doing all of the learning. What do you have us doing between, when we got back and when we went out again?
Yeah, there was a lot because we got back, and because of our awesome navigator, we got back with a good bit of time so that we were able to start building our masks and our stove while we were waiting for the other teams to show up. And so that was really helpful for our team. And for me personally, it was great because it gave me time to feel like I was catching up. But then we went right into, Dr. Dustin was going over medical. And so that was the medical segment where we were going through the SMART T stuff, the assess security, massive hemorrhaging, airway, respiratory, circulatory, hyperthermia, transport, those items. And it was cool because each one of these different areas that he was going through, there were examples. Like when we were learning about a tourniquet, I remember him tying a tourniquet on a guy's leg and having someone else come and check for pulse. You remember that?
Yep.
And the guy's in obvious pain with a tourniquet on his leg and just having to grit his teeth while they check for the pulse. And sure enough, he had no pulse in his leg anymore. But it was all hands-on practical stuff. Plus the transport one was really fun too, because we built that litter out of 3 or 4 rucks.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, You find some creative ways to carry people.
I want to say we spent a good,
Couple
hour or
hours.
two
Yeah.
going over medical. Yeah. Yeah. It was all really practical stuff. Plus the stuff he was telling us that we should never even think about doing. That was like the needle D and stuff like that. I will talk about it, but you will never do this.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. He definitely drove that point home.
Yeah. But there was also a lot of really practical stuff too, like learning about hypothermia. And I mean, I didn't know that you could get hypothermia when it wasn't incredibly cold outside or things like that, just based on your body. And so that was helpful stuff. Having him describe some of the signs of hypothermia and things to look for. Because hearing that, that it's happened at events and things like that made it a lot more real.
Yeah, there were definitely some takeaways from this that, you could apply to, just normal GORUCK events or training or non-disaster scenarios, which I always love because I don't, want to be in a disaster scenario to have to apply all this stuff. I want to learn things I can apply in my everyday life. I felt like that there was a decent amount of that in the training.
Yeah, like I also had that we were going over fire and things like that. So it's with that fire and water. That's practical stuff that I'm able to use while I'm out hiking and things like that. So it's so much of it was, you've got the extreme of a survival type scenario, but so much of it was applicable to things that you run into when you're outdoors or just in everyday life.
And then the other notes I've got from that section is that we talked about, food and trying to source food. You got pretty deep into roadkill, which was pretty funny. There were a couple sour faces in the crowd on that one. But then the difference as well between the hide sites and the harbor sites I thought was really interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So the whole thing, the hide site you set up and it's kind of a temporary location, and then the harbor sites where you can bring stuff back to. Just an interesting way of thinking of the kind of locations that you're going to be selecting when you're out there trying to hide from the other teams hunting you.
Right. Yeah, with the hide site being easily defendable, easily escapable, whereas the harbor site was something you could defend, but you could also sleep in with security set up. Also the practical tips about the water. Look for floating carcasses.
Yeah, right. Yeah, things to avoid. So do you have anything else in your notes before we went out on that second movement? Because that's about all I've got on my end.
Yeah, same with me. Yeah.
So that second movement, was that the one where 3 of the teams went out to hide and the other team went out to hunt them?
Yeah. That's one where we were told to go out and grab food and hide.
Yes.
Which, our team, I don't know about yours, but it seemed like our team managed to hit all the dumpsters that had already been hit, because we didn't find, other than finding, ends of onions and things at a pho place, we did not find much in the way of food at all.
Yeah, we lucked out. We found steaks. That was a pretty solid find. Nothing.
Oh, you were the ones with the steaks.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, Team Sparkle Pony roasting the steaks on the homemade, jet boil. It doesn't beat last year where we found bacon and scallops and made bacon wrapped scallops on a.
Oh wow!
Yeah, yep. And they'd only been in the dumpster for a couple hours. That's you can't get much better than that.
Yeah, that's a win right there. We're hitting up Central Market or something like that.
It was the back of a QFC. We saw them dump some bags, and we went over there about an hour later, and sure enough, expired that day.
Lucked out.
Mm-hmm. So was movement 2, that was the food movement, was that also the hunker down and hide for an extended period of time?
Because I remember on this one, we were going out and pretty quickly we were going through a parking lot next to a car dealership, and we saw another team come around the corner, and we just ran and went behind some dumpsters, climbed over a fence, went off and around trying to evade them. And then, of course, one of us ran back and got a picture so we could send it in saying we spotted another team. But we were hitting dumpsters. So while we did hide, we had spent so much time hitting dumpsters. We ended up we ended up getting a text that we had to be back no later than 0300. So this was the one where on the way back, we got that text that we needed to make 3 improvised weapons.
Ah, yes.
And bring it back with us. Yeah.
That was a good one. What improvised weapons did you end up finding?
We had a few. We we found a pipe, like an iron pipe with a busted sprinkler head on the end of it. We had a vampire stick, as one of the guys called it, that we had found a big stick and we sharpened the end. But our favorite one, which we got told was the best idea, but was poorly executed, and so it was a failure, was the mace that we made with a rock and duct tape. And if we had put some 550 cord in and reinforced the thing, it actually would have been a pretty decent weapon, but he took it and he pulled on it with not much strength at all, and the duct tape just fell away. How about you? What did you have?
What did we find? We found like a metal stake or something. I mean, it was basically like a short knife. Yeah, essentially. I think we found maybe a screwdriver as well, and then we found like this giant beat stick. And so it was, nothing that I wanted to get hit with. And I mean, it sounds like you guys had the metal rod with the sprinkler head. I mean, no one wants to get beat with that.
No, it was an ugly looking thing too.
Yeah. And the thing I found interesting about that movement, I mean, we were in Bellevue, which is a, fairly affluent area. It's not much, garbage around there or anything. But when you're out there, like specifically looking for a weapon, there are things you can find, even in spots like that.
Yeah, definitely. And it wasn't that hard. It was because he told us just as we were all getting close to being back to the CrossFit box, and I mean, we're just looking on the ground and finding stuff right there. It was surprising how easy it was to find a weapon.
Yeah, it really was. And so it just makes you wonder. It's one of those, those common sense things. Like, oh yeah, I guess if I did need to find like a weapon quickly or something, I mean, look at all this stuff.
Yeah, just a matter of looking and being creative.
And so we got back from that one.
Restraints were next. So we had the duct tape restraints and then also the zip ties.
And so what were your thoughts on the restraint breaking?
I thought it was just so cool because I'd always wanted to try it because I'd seen, how to break out of zip tie restraints or duct tape or this or that. And I'm like, I should give that a try sometime. Never did it. But doing it there, it was, when you know the technique, it was a heck of a lot easier than I thought it would be. And also learning how to deal with the thicker zip ties, which you can't necessarily just break by brute force, by using some 550 or your shoelaces and essentially cutting through it. That was really cool. It was, I'd say that was one of my favorite points because it's just really satisfying to break out of those restraints and know you can do it.
Yeah, and like you said, it's one of those things that people read about and like, oh, that'd be fun to try, and either never do because you don't find time or you can't find someone who will duct tape you up and let you break out. So yeah, I thought that was really fun. It was nice that everyone had the multiple opportunities to do the duct tape, and then if they wanted, they could attempt the zip ties, which was definitely interesting to see how quickly some people could get out of those.
Yeah, and especially when he had you all trussed up too, getting your hands and your feet, and you're just sitting there on the floor and having to figure out how to get your shoelaces through so that you can start cutting through your restraints. And once you know the technique, it's I was surprised at how easily you could cut through those things.
Yeah, me too. I was a bit surprised on that one.
After that, we had to just start the fire. So we weren't cooking food yet, but we had to start a fire. And then once we had gotten our fires started, we were to put them out, and then we went out to go get maced. That's when we had to go to the Delta waypoint. But it ended up, I wondered if he did that one on purpose, to be honest, because the Delta one was a mess because the point itself wasn't really well defined. And so half of the people thought that it was at this park that was under construction, and so the road was just a mess around it. There was tons of rough rock and things like that. Whereas the other half was over near a parking lot. And so when Cadre showed up and he was looking for us, he was not very happy. And so we all got directed to go to this particular parking lot. And yeah, I mean, I remember at that point, the team leaders got chewed out for not following directions. All the TLs, I think, got duct taped together. And that's when we then we had duct tape our hands and, we had duct tape for hands before while we were waiting for him to show up. And so we were having to run across the street from this park to the parking lot where he wanted us to be duct taped, holding our rucks in our hands in front of us, waddling along on the street. So it must have been a fun sight. But yeah, then the TLs got duct taped together, and then we all got to get maced.
Yeah, we sure did. That was fun.
Yeah, we did. It was.
We were I don't know, like you were saying, that point was a mess. Trying to figure out where it was across the street. You said it was under construction. There was a bunch of do not enter signs. We were the one team that was lucky enough to have chosen the parking lot as the point that we were going to meet at. So we were waiting right there when he came by and he was yelling, "Where'd the other team go?" And we're like, they just went down the street. He's like, then, rushes off after him and brings them back.
Yeah, yelling at us for hiding from him.
Yeah. He's like, and then you guys jumped into the bush. He's like, yeah, that was so funny.
Yep.
So yeah, and he brings all the TLs out. And so we all so I was one of the TLs. And so we all get up in front. And I think he tied the first two together. And he came over to our group and he's like, yelled at the other guy for, I can't remember what he did. It was either jumping the bushes or being across the street. And then he looked at me because, we were the one lucky team that had flipped the coin and chosen the right spot to be. He was like, "Sucks to be you. We've got an even number. I need to tape this guy to someone." And so got taped up with him.
You got it anyway.
Yep, got it anyway, did everything right and still got taped up. But yeah, I mean, that was just luck of the draw that we stopped there instead of going, because every other time we had hit that point, we had gone to a different spot. Because it was such a mess.
Had you ever been maced before?
Only during the Constellation 6 that day, and then the 2 Constellation 12s the couple of years before. So thankfully, outside of that experience, or outside of a GORUCK experience, I've not been maced. Actually, that's false. When I was in college, someone did spray a bunch of mace in our kitchen, and that was a disaster. But that's probably a story for a different day. But in the grand scheme of things, no. So was that your first time being maced?
Yeah, that was my first. Yeah, and I wondered how the mask would hold up.
So how did your mask hold up with that one?
Well enough, I guess. I don't know what good would be. Less than I thought, because I certainly, my lungs started burning, and I certainly was getting somewhat irritated. But as far as my eyes and itching on the face or anything like that, I mean, since he got it straight into the mask, that was all fine. So it was just the dealing with the burning in the lungs. But you just control your breathing, and because we had to get out of the duct tape first before we could take the mask off, and so you just focus on your breathing, focus on breaking the restraints, and you get there. So that was okay.
Yeah, he tied us up pretty good. I know he tied you guys up pretty good too. So that was, you get sprayed in the face and you're not even holding the mask, and then you got to get out, and it's a tough one.
Yeah.
How was your trip back to the start point?
Yeah, I was going to say, because then that was the next part, wasn't it? We had to get back undetected. We did. Yeah, it was good, but we were very much into it as far as we wanted to get back without being detected, and it was really, I'd say that was a point where we were bonded together as a team the most, because every single one of us, none of us wanted to be caught, and so we were moving as a unit. We were just very well coordinated, I guess. And so we got back in pretty good time, and he didn't see us. We thought we saw him a couple times, but we didn't stick around long enough to find out. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so fun doing it at the end of the event because you've been exploring the city, and so even if you're not from the area, you have a good idea of where things are. So you've spotted little holes and little thoroughfares up until that point, and so you can really make use of all the little tricks and back alleys and stuff and the fences, whatever you found up until that point, and trying to make your way back to the safe zone.
Yeah.
So yeah, we had a ton of fun with that too.
Do you notice it's funny how the route just became so much more familiar? Well, yeah, I know this area.
Right? I haven't really spent a minute there before this, but now, everything's like, oh yeah, we have to go this way. Like we can hide behind this bush for a second, cut through this. So after that, we got back, and then it was, get the stoves out, get the fires lit, and then start cooking some chicken's feet.
Chicken's feet and those lovely chicken livers.
I did not. Oh, actually, we did cook those. I did not partake in those. I did try the chicken's feet. But yeah, how did your team do with your fires?
I think that was one of the things I wish we focused more on, was getting more fuel. We did okay, and everybody was able to get their stuff cooked, but we didn't have enough fuel, and we had plenty of stuff to start the fires with, but as far as good wood to actually get the fire going, we were lighter than I think we should have been. We were able to scrounge some up. I don't really remember how, but we managed to scrounge some up at the last minute. I remember, because when we had first built the fire, before we went out to get sprayed, we had realized, shoot, we got a bunch of hay and stuff to get this thing started, but we need to bring wood back, and so we had brought some back with us. But yeah, folks did all right, and then it was just sort of the art of cooking our wild game. Most of us went for the chicken livers. I think we had a few folks going for the chicken feet.
Yeah, the thing that got me with the whole cooking aspect was I didn't realize how much fuel you needed and how long you needed to cook things. Just like how much went in to cooking a single chicken's foot. I mean, that was a lot of fuel just to cook something that, wouldn't even fill up one person.
Yeah, so true. And I've got the map stuck up here on my wall, and it has under the survival cooking, well done, well done, well done. And it's true. And just when you think you're starting to make a dent in it, and you look and see that you barely got the thing warm and you've already burned through all of this fuel, it really hit home to me just how, if you're going to cook with wood that you've scavenged, you're going to need a lot more than you think. Especially if we were going to have to boil water or anything like that, it would have been a much different story. Did you guys cook any of the steaks?
No, we got one on, but it was just, I don't even think that you could call it rare. It was, we blackened one side of it. Yeah, I don't even know if it was warm. It was a little charcoaly and a little, canny, but probably had some, pieces of cardboard stuck to it that had floated up. It was not a pretty sight.
Yeah, I made a note on the chicken liver. I just described it as nasty.
Yeah.
So that was my food review.
A safe note.
Yeah, it was special. So I did see on another constellation, I forget who the cadre was for it. They had followed Dustin's tradition and got the chicken feet out for everybody. So at least the tradition continues.
Yes. This event, it's a really unique event that GORUCK offers, especially when you look at the other offerings that they have. It's not like a light, a tough, a heavy. It's not like selection or team assessment. It's not like any of those. What did you think about the whole event? When you finished it?
I remember immediately thinking, right when I got to the end of it, I want to do another one of these. I want to do more like these, because it was so educational and so hands-on and useful. Plus, hearing that, I think it was you or somebody just was mentioning how all of them are different, and it's just, which I guess is really like the challenge style events themselves, in that the cadre is going to put their own special flair on it and do it their own way. And especially with a lot of these themed events that we've had, it just made me excited to go and see, when the next one's going to be, or if there's any other event similar to this to do. So I definitely do it again. And if they have more like it, I'd certainly be one for those as well. It's really useful.
It is. And it's just, like you said, the cadre put their own spin on it. So each one is different in its own way, and they're a ton of fun. Do you have any other stories from the night? Things that happened where you thought you guys might get in trouble, or
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, we had I remember we had to cut. I think it was after we got told that we needed to head back, and so we took a shortcut through a Porsche dealership. And it turns out that they were having some big event going on, and there was all these people driving up and getting valet parking. There was something big going on inside, and we were going through the parking lot, weaving through the cars, trying to fuel up. So we're powering down some protein bars and stuff like that, talking loudly, and we got some looks, and so we just started moving a little faster and got out of there. We had the police stop and talk to us, but that was fun. We told them briefly what we were doing, and they said something like, "Stay safe, don't be dumb," or something like that. But it was a positive response. It was fun. But then some of the places that we had to go, like you remember that big park that had the trail?
Yes.
I forget which, maybe it was I forget which waypoint it was. When we got there, it was closed, and there was a big gate across it, or a big, the fence part of it was closed. So we had to hop that and go in. So there were a few where we had to go places we probably shouldn't, but it all turned out okay.
Yeah, it's kind of the name of the game with GORUCK Constellation, which makes it kind of fun.
Yeah, it does. It's sort of like Star Course. You're just trying to be efficient.
Oh yeah, especially at the Star Course, you're like, how can I cut off as much distance as possible to finish this in the right amount?
Yeah.
I'm so glad that you had a fun time there. I had a fun time, and I know my team did, but it's always good to hear that, others who were, not on your team did as well. And I'm just like double excited for what they're going to be doing with Constellation next year. I've been talking back and forth with Cadre Machine, who's going to be the one running the changes. So hopefully he'll be on soon once they've got some information that they're ready to announce.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Looking forward to hearing about it and signing up for sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the event that they're talking about where they're changing it big for the year, and then they're going to run them around the country like they did this year, but then they're going to have a bigger kind of culminating one where you have to do one of the smaller ones to go to the bigger ones. So it should be interesting.
Did there used to be like a 24-hour one as well? Something like that?
There was one Constellation 24 that they did.
Okay.
And so that was in the first year. They didn't do one last year, and so I think they're going to be revamping it a little bit, and we'll see what happens. So I think we ran through pretty much everything that happened at the event. The skills that you learn, the mindset that you really have to be in to kind of get the most from this style of event. Is there anything that we might have forgot, or anything else that you want to go over that we might have missed?
No, I think that really covers it. I'd say anybody just sign up. Folks I've talked to within some of my other groups like Pathfinder and things like that, everybody's been so positive about it. And so, yeah, it's a blast. Do it.
Thank you so much for listening to the All Day Ruckoff podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this interview with David. I had a ton of fun talking with him, looking back at the event, remembering that night. GORUCK Constellation 12 is a lot of fun. As I mentioned, I did the event in 2019, 2018, 2017. When it comes around again in 2020, I'll be there. And it's really a unique experience. If you want to get links to anything we talked about, you can visit the show notes, alldayruckoff.com/podcast/episode-104, or just head on over to alldayruckoff.com. If you want to support the podcast, you can leave a review on either Apple Podcasts, or on our Facebook page. Those are truly appreciated. You can also check out the online store, alldayruckoff.com/store. I believe we just passed 100 items in there, so a lot of different stuff. And then the final way you can support on Patreon, patreon.com/alldayruckoff. There's a link in the show notes, and there's some bonus content and other little things involved with that as well. So you can check that out if you want. Thank you so much for the incredible support. Can't wait to talk to you next week. And as always, don't forget, attitude is everything. Keep yours positive and drink hard, rock harder.